Hey everybody, so today I'm going to be covering what I think are the absolute essential kind of core set of scales you need to learn when you're starting out on guitar. The scale types and the patterns and shapes I'm going to show you today, you're going to keep coming back to them time and time again. They're the real foundation, not just for, improvisation and building solos, but for also understanding, how everything fits together in more of a harmony sort of theory side. So let's start out with the most important one, okay? Okay, major scale. If you're going to learn any scale, it's this one. And to a certain extent, really, if you've learnt the major scale, you've kind of got everything. You've got all the other scales and modes, for the most part. The stuff that you're going to come across day to day. This is an absolute kind of reference scale, yeah? So much of the stuff is built from it, and also all of our understanding of like chords and arpeggios and song structure, chord progressions. This all ties back to this scale. So if you're going to learn one of these and ditch the rest, this is the one to focus on. Okay, so a bundle of all the tabs and diagrams from today's lesson are going to be available over in my Patreon shop. Okay, let's start out with this shape. This is the one most people come across first. It might not be the one that you play forever, in the future when you're improvising, but it is one that you'll refer back to and use. It's great for understanding more of the other stuff, the chords, arpeggios, progressions. It's sort of laid out a bit more nicely for that. Let's have a look at it first. So I'm going to do everything today in this, starting at this 5th fret, I should say, in the key of A. So I'm going to play. Okay, so playing the 2-octave version I've included in the bundle, it will look like this. Okay, you'll notice I'm playing here kind of what we call in position. I'm not moving left or right with any of my fingers. I'm not doing any slides. I'm not moving, to sort of favour my stronger fingers. I'm making sure that I'm using all four. We start out with this middle finger. Okay, that's really, really important if you're going to start practicing scales and start getting into this, is to understand that idea of playing something in position and not doing those jumps across with your fingers. Because when you then come on later on and you need that sort of speed, you need to have that sort of muscle memory to be able to run up and down the scale without really having to think about choosing fingers or deciding where you're going with it. You need to be able to just run it off at will. Okay, let's look at another one starting from that same root note. This one's a little bit more playable, and you might get more use out of this when you're delving into kind of building your own solos and improvising a little bit. It's this nice 3 notes per string version of the major scale. Bit more of a stretch, that one, but it's got lots more symmetry in it, and it is even. It's those 3 notes per string, so it gives us loads more options for kind of building lines. Okay, let's look at 2 with the roots on the A string then as well for now. Okay, so this one, is actually really sort of more commonly thought of as a natural minor scale. If we started from there and played through the same scale, we'd have a natural minor, but I'll come on to that in a little while. I use this all the time as a major scale pattern. It's a really great one, really sits under the fingers nicely. But there's also this one, if we started again from the same root note here, okay, we're playing everything in E here now, 7th fret on the A string. So now we can do this one, which is another 3 notes per string pattern. Again, really, really useful, really, really playable, great for building shapes. All right, so next up, let's take a look at natural minor scale. Okay, now I'm specifying the natural minor here. There are other variations of the minor scale, but the real core one that we need to look at first and really understand is the natural minor. Now, interestingly, the natural minor is actually one of the modes of the major scale. Okay, I'm going to do another lesson on modes, but for today, it's worth understanding that if we played from our major scale and we got to the 6th degree, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, if we carried on up the major scale from that 6th degree, that would give us the natural minor, okay, so, or also known as the Aeolian mode. Okay, but let's have a look at some real common natural minor scale patterns. Okay, let's start again down here on the low E string. Okay, so we're going to start out with this one. Again, this might be one that most people are familiar with and maybe learn first because it's got this E string root. Again, for the most part on this, we're playing in position, but then little position shift there. Okay, so at the G, little position shift back into position for the remainder of the scale. Okay, that one's pretty good, pretty playable, quite usable, but there is another 3 notes per string version we can use here. Okay, if we use that same root note of A, there, the 5th fret, what I'm actually going to do here now is start from the note below, the flat 7 G, and we're going to play this pattern. Okay, that one gives us, again, just like the 3 notes per string major scale, that gives us a lot more scope to build runs, to build lines. So you might find that one a bit more playable. Okay, let's take a look now on the A string root. Okay, let's start in E again here at the 7th fret. Okay, so let's play this one. Not a 3 notes per string pattern, but still pretty playable, this one. Okay, and another variation on that, if we start on this same root note E, but now we're going to sort of play in a downwards pattern. We're going to start with a little finger and we'll play this pattern. Again, quite a nice playable pattern, much easier with that one to build runs. Okay, so now let's take a look at the other little group of scales, the other little family, which are the pentatonics. Okay, and again, these are really important. They're kind of part of the language on guitar. They're a part of the language on any instrument, but guitar players particularly, and if you're thinking of anything to do with blues, jazz, rock, classic rock, whatever, metal, this is kind of the language. Yeah, it's the one we kind of all recognize. This is the scale from which most of the riffs, the most famous riffs of the last, 50 years have probably taken from this scale, especially in guitar music. Okay, so whether it's major or minor pentatonic, this is a real sort of core one you need to know. Let's start out with the minor pentatonic this time. Okay, this is the most popular pattern. You may be familiar with it already, but if you're not, you need to learn this one. So not 3 notes per string, 2 notes per string though, so nice and symmetrical and nice and even. A lot easier with this to start building little runs, yeah, little patterns, really great playable scale shape. There's a whole bunch of other minor pentatonic shapes which I'll include in the tabs bundle, but this one is right next door here, overlapping with this one. And again, 2 notes per string, nice and even, great for building lines, building patterns. And because of the fact that it overlays, this original pattern we've learned, you can start linking patterns together and start developing that skill, joining up patterns and not being tied to just one box. Okay, so now let's look at the major pentatonic. Okay, so maybe not as many famous kind of rock riffs written in the major pentatonic, but it's still pretty sort of prominent. It's still part of the language. You're still going to hear stuff and you're going to use it in improv all the time. Now, the really great thing about understanding this major pentatonic, this is probably the first way most of us come across developing an understanding of relative major and minor keys, okay, which I'm not going to go into deeply today, but I will just say this. If you take A minor pentatonic, which we were just looking at, yeah, and if we then started from that second note of the A minor pentatonic, which is the note C, and we played it from that note to C at the top, that is now C major pentatonic, okay? Reason being, they are relative keys. C major and A minor are relative keys. Okay, I'm not going to delve any further into that today. You can check out my lesson on relative major minor, which I'll include in the description. But you basically, if you know the minor pentatonic in A, you can play from the second degree, and you're also playing, by playing the same scale, you're also playing C major pentatonic. Okay, so I'm not going to go into the relative major minor thing today in this lesson, but I will include a link to my lesson on relative major minor. Definitely worth checking out, because what you start to understand from that is really how we start to view modes, and how actually, if you know one scale, you know several.